go out and kind of do videos for employees and
How to save money, greening your electric bill, or we did an internal one on getting the flu shot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It covers all cameras.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, great. Well, welcome to Media Reporter. My name is Nicole Israel. Thanks for joining us today. And today we have with us Elizabeth Matthews and Amber Sisson, Public Relations Managers at Con Edison. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here. And we're going to talk about social media and the huge impact it really plays in storms like Sandy and in Nemo, and how people could really utilize social media to their benefit when these calamities happen. But first, for people who may be behind the curve, if we could just talk a little bit about the basics and what exactly Twitter is, or Facebook, and how Con Ed uses it to their advantage.
Sure. So Twitter is a social media platform of quick, short sound bites and thoughts, 140 characters basically, and it's just a quick, easy way to communicate Con Edison's message out to our customers and our followers. The Facebook page is a little bit more intricate, a little bit more involved. There's pictures that you have the ability to post and things like that, and much more commenting involved on that platform, and we use that also as another platform to get our information out.
Okay, and just before we get into more detail on that, if you could talk a little bit about how Con Edison, what did they do before social media really took off?
Well, we're 24/7, so if a customer ever has any sort of a concern, obviously they can call our call center, 1-800-75-CON-ED, and they'll always be able to talk to a customer service representative about any concern that they have with their bill. And then from a media standpoint, we do press releases, interviews, phone interviews, TV interviews, radio interviews. We're also a 24/7 office. There are conference calls daily, that we have to try and, communicate our message with, different electeds or agencies in our area. So we try, we're communicating on a 24/7 basis.
Okay, and then just going back to October when Sandy really hit, did it open the floodgates? Did you expect such a rush of, the need for Twitter and Facebook, and what happened at the company?
I think it happened really quickly.
Yeah. We expected people to be using it, but to the extent that it grew, I don't think anyone anticipated that. I mean, we had a following of about 6,000, and it grew to 26,000 at one point during the storm. So we knew people would be going there for information. We just didn't realize that many people would be going there.
That's massive. Can you describe what happened in those days following up to the storm, and then going forward?
Sure. I guess the day of, we were, kind of just sitting there on call waiting for questions to come in. No one was really asking too much at that point. We were putting out information about safety, telling people we were ready and prepared for the storm, but that was kind of about it. Around 8:30, I think, is when power went out in Manhattan. So that was when the rush happened, and overnight people started asking questions, and then it just seemed to catch on in the 3 days afterward, and all sorts of questions started getting flooded in.
Can you describe the process? So when someone tweets that they have an issue and it's a very hyper-local situation, how does it work? So who does it go to?
Sure. During a storm, we're all in a war room or situation room, so we're all sitting very close to each other with the media team, our government relations team, other public affairs staffers. So everyone's kind of getting the same information at the same time. And we have our emergency response team upstairs. So it's 2 flights of stairs that you can run up. You can get any question you want fielded by people there. There's representatives throughout the company. So that's kind of the way information flows. We had 2 people on during the storm, and we used platforms like Hootsuite and Radiant6 to kind of be able to see who's responding to what, and if one of us can respond to something better, we're literally sitting across from each other doing it that way. I think doing it distance-wise would be a little bit harder and not as well done. Having everyone that close together was really beneficial for us.
Okay, just I guess to backtrack a little, was social media what was it being used for before the storm?
Everything. Initially, we started out in social media with a Con Ed Liz and Con Ed Sarah Twitter handles, and they sort of had specific initiatives, whether it was smart cars or smart grid or energy efficiency. And then we had a Power of Green Facebook page and a Power of Giving Facebook page, which talked about our energy efficiency programs, and then a lot of the volunteer efforts and nonprofits that we have relationships with. And then I would say leading up to the summer is when we decided to launch the Con Edison Twitter handle and the Con Edison Facebook page as sort of all-encompassing platforms where you can get information on everything. And we see a need for our customers. Our customers want to get information on these platforms, and we want to give them the information through these channels.
Was that the reason why you decided to kind of consolidate into one page, into one Twitter handle?
Yes, they're all cross-promotional, and they really are sort of under the Con Edison brand, but the Con Edison specific page and handle, we saw a need for our, to be on those channels and on those sites specifically, just so that we could get information out to our customers, and so our customers could communicate to us, which was, definitely the case during Sandy.
Well, what were they communicating prior to Sandy? Then we'll go into what happened afterwards.
I think it really ran the gamut, and it was. I would respond on a case-by-case basis. Some customer might have a question about their bill, in which case I'd be able to kind of send that to a subject matter expert in customer operations. If somebody had a question about a job site location, some people would occasionally tweet a picture of a Con Edison job site and ask what was happening there. So I was able to send that to a subject matter expert in the company and get the information and then get back to the person. And sometimes with customer ops, the inquiry was taken offline completely, and a representative from operations would speak directly with the customer.
Okay, so then just going now, back to Sandy in October, and you said you did not expect the floodgates to open like it did. So you had the war room and you disseminated information. How did you disseminate? You cover over, the whole tri-state area, or all boroughs and Westchester. Did you do it by geography, or how was it disseminated?
No, we had it split up hours, so we were working 12-hour shifts with a little bit of an overlap there. But there was no breakdown of geography, because the questions coming in, a lot of them are the same questions from Westchester to Brooklyn. It's just people wanting to know when their power is going to come back on. A lot of Manhattan is asking the boundaries of networks, because we would tell people when networks were coming back, and the neighborhoods that we're naming don't necessarily match like a map, like if you Google map it and look up the neighborhoods. So we were letting people know the specific streets. Because if you left your apartment and you want to know if the power's back on, that's really the only way we can tell you. We're not taking address information. So we can tell you the neighborhood based on the top boundary, the south boundary, like east and west boundary. So you can know if you can go back to your apartment because you have power now and your elevator's working. So it's kind of a convenience thing. A lot of people in Manhattan were asking questions like that. Westchester and Queens are a little harder because they're spread out and it's an overhead network. We can't go and tell you house by house who's coming back on.
Right.
But for a lot of Manhattan people, it's a convenience thing. If you're on the Upper West Side with your friend waiting for your power to come back on, you want to know. So you're asking us, and we kind of felt responsible for people to get them back to their apartments if the power was back on.
Well, how did you appease them if they were, waiting and people were getting very anxious about their power?
Right.
What was the feedback from Con Ed to help kind of, ameliorate things a bit?
I think we took the approach of it's a really hard situation and people are anxious and some people are scared and it's frustrating to lose power for a few hours, let alone a few days. So, and we were all in the same situation. We had coworkers who lost cars, houses, that sort of thing. So I think there was a complete understanding that people are going to be angry, frustrated, and to just respond as best you can.
I think they did a really good job of managing expectations. To let customers know that it could be a week and to prepare for that. And I think that a lot of the customers were happy to be acknowledged, to let, because they were 24/7. So to know that somebody was listening, I think was, could be a bit of a comfort.
Do you think that was one of the best benefits of having Twitter during that time?
Yeah, I think probably, because the call center is flooded with calls. And if you're waiting on the phone, or say you only have your cell phone to operate with and you don't want to use all the power on it, you're not going to make a phone call. But to use a platform like Twitter or Facebook doesn't take much power or capability. You can grab your laptop, head to Starbucks, or use it on your phone. So for people who didn't have power, it was the better way for them to communicate, I think.
Really? So this was more efficient. It's more efficient to use social media than perhaps call the call center?
I think it depends on the situation, but I think in regards to what Amber was saying with no power, to possibly have a wait time of 20 minutes as opposed to sending a quick tweet out and possibly getting a quick tweet back. I think for time and for conserving the battery on your phone, it might have been a great help. But on Twitter and on Facebook, you can only really do so much. It's it really is the call center that has the information and the background. And to report outages, you do have to call 1-800-75-CON-ED or go to coned.com to report an outage. So you couldn't necessarily report an outage through Twitter to Amber.
So it's more efficient. You'll get a better response through the call center, but tweeting would at least get the information out there.
Right. If you have a specific account-related question, like for as a customer, then it's definitely better to go to the call center. We don't have account information. None of that is privy to us. We just know the general idea of what the company's doing and get privy information into the conference calls of what we're going to be doing, how much staff we have on hand, that sort of stuff. So if it's specific, Twitter is probably not going to be that helpful, and it's 140 characters. That's pretty much how long your question has to be.
Right.
So a lot of people were just asking, so overhead service isn't going to be back for 10 days. How do I know if I have overhead service? That was one of the most shocking questions we got. So many people asking, well, how do I know if I have underground service? And we had to sit there being like, how do you tell someone that they have overhead or underground service? Because to us, it's just, you don't know. But so we tweeted out pictures of utility poles saying if you see utility pole, you have overhead service. Because I don't know, we weren't expecting the flooding of people asking, well, do I have underground? I live in this area, and giving us street locations. And we kind of had to be like, well, if you see, the grates in the ground, or you live in Manhattan, you probably have underground and you'll be back by this weekend. If you have overhead and you see utility poles, you'll be back by this time.
Absolutely. People are, I guess, sometimes unaware of what type of utility they have, but that's very innovative to send out the photos showcasing this is what is. Did you find you were sending out a lot of photos, as far as crews going out, to also kind of appease people, to let them know power will be coming back on?
Yeah, we did some photos, but a lot more video. We have video crews on hand, and we were sending them out to kind of show people what was actually happening. So we had video crews going down to Manhattan as they were pumping out equipment in areas to show how much water really did actually hit Lower Manhattan. We had crews out on Staten Island kind of to show the amount of damage and what the crews were trying to do in the midst of that damage. And the same for Brooklyn, Queens, and Westchester, just so that people have an idea. If you're sitting at home and you don't get the news because your power's out and you can't listen to the radio, or you don't have a radio, to be able to see a video on your phone kind of helps you understand the breadth of the situation that all 5 boroughs in Westchester are dealing with.
And what was the response from people who were now seeing these videos and photos?
A lot of them got reshared, which I guess to us is a great way of for everyone seeing it. I know some news crews ended up using our videos just because the footage, they're covering all sorts of other stories. So to put up that as B-roll was great for them too. So we had a lot of views on videos, more than I think we've ever really seen.
Okay, and then did you also find if people were tweeting and they were talking about a specific area, and a large percentage of people were talking about this area that was out or power lines had fallen, did that generate more of a response than just a single tweet about a single area?
We tried to respond to as many people as we could, and during the midst of it, when it was really kind of craziness, we started just grouping tweets. So if we saw the same type of question being asked over and over and over again, we wouldn't respond individually to everyone. We would start putting the people's handles in there, or just putting up an answer that was general so that everyone kind of got a response from us. Just because it was a lot.
Absolutely, I'm sure. Was there a number at the end of the day?
I
Too many?
have no idea.
can you share some examples of the success you had with the social media during Sandy?
People responded positively, which was nice to see, kind of saying thanks for the response. There were a few articles, I think Huffington Post and a few blogs wrote about it. There was a really actually nice blog about the marathon. Someone was upset with New York Roadrunners and kind of their response and comparing it to Con Edison, like just kind of saying that silence isn't the best answer, and even in a difficult situation, like it's nice to have some type of response from an organization or a company. So, I mean, things like that were nice and showed that people appreciated the response despite, I think there were a lot of frustrated, angry people.
Absolutely. Did you find any challenges or anything that, after this experience that you could learn from moving forward?
I guess to make sure that we have the staff on hand and that it is, during a crisis, it's a 24/7 situation. So on a blue sky day, we're not staffing the Twitter handle 24/7. But during something like Sandy, or if some other hurricane or storm were to happen, that people do kind of want a response. And there's no way to handle the influx of tweets without having someone there all the time. You can't, it's really hard to go backwards when you're getting a tweet every 5 seconds.
Right, definitely.
I think that we learned that it is, customers see this as a trusted source of information, and customers see that they can go there and get an answer to their question. And that, I think, is essentially what social media is all about. And to continue to give customers what they expect, like Amber said, it needs the staffing on our end to manage the influx of tweets is definitely something that, we're going to be working on going forward.
So going forward, what happened during Nemo? Were you ready at this point, or were you overstaffed, or what was the ambiance at Con Ed?
We were ready. We were ready.
The two of us were ready.
We were ready. From a social media perspective, we were ready to go. And what we can do a lot of times is sort of tweet out prep messages, and we were sending out safety tips and information on where you can go for reporting your outage, and just trying to keep customers as informed as possible. We were sending out a lot of press releases, and we'll usually just take that pre-approved messaging from there and make it appropriate for Twitter. And we got a lot of retweets on that stuff, but for the most part, Nemo was not too bad. Nemo was kind to us.
That's good. And how can a customer, what's the most efficient way for a customer to reach you guys to get adequate help when they need it? Is it
through a website, through Con Edison, www.coned.com, and then through the 800 number, 1-800-75-CON-ED.
Is there any information they need to be prepared with to tell you just their address? Is that
address or account number?
Okay, and then they would get the most efficient response from Con Ed at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the tweeting helps you identify where the problem may be, but it's really the website and the call center.
For very specific questions about your account, you should always contact the call center, because they have the information there right in front of them, and they'll be able to pull it up and assist you.
Okay. And just what were some of the greatest advantages? What were the benefits of having this social media site now for Sandy versus other big storms in the past?
I guess you can do a comparison.
I think that our first major experience with a storm and social media would be Irene from last September.
Right.
We were really able to see the importance of Con Edison having a presence on social media during that storm, because the two Twitter handles that we had, Liz and Sarah, the following went up very quickly, and retweets were going through. I think I started out with maybe 250 followers, and within a couple of hours or a day it went up to like 800. It went very, very quickly because people knew that they could go there and get information. It didn't necessarily take away from calling the call center or visiting the website, but it was just another platform. So we definitely saw an importance of being on social media during that storm, and have since just increased and enhanced our presence on all the sites, and we'll continue to do so. You know, if customers want to get information on these platforms, we're going to give it to them there.
And just so people know, what are the platforms? Is it just at Con Edison?
So we have at Con Edison, we have at Con Ed Liz, and then for Facebook, we have the Con Edison Facebook page, we have the Power of Green Facebook page, and we have the Power of Giving Facebook page.
So for all these different pages, you know, people can look at them just for emergency purposes, but you have a bunch of other purposes as well for a lot of the Twitter handles. Can you describe some of them?
The Power of Green Facebook page is sort of energy efficiency specific. We talk about all of the energy efficiency programs that we have available at Con Edison, how customers can sign up for them, green tips, and how to save money on your bill. And during storms, we don't normally put information up on that page. We sort of keep that specific to our energy efficiency green team initiatives. But for Con Edison, the Con Edison Facebook page does turn into a storm page, and you'll be able to get information on that page. And the Power of Giving page, you could talk to a little bit.
Sure, yeah, that's for our nonprofit partners. We support community groups, civic groups,
different volunteer
a lot
events,
of science and math groups, and different volunteer events throughout the community. So that's for, I think there's over 1,000 nonprofit partners for like their way to connect with us. And then for our own employees who volunteer through those programs to kind of connect with each other on their own platform.
Okay, so kind of definitely has a various amount of different social media outlets. But so going back to the at Con Edison for more emergency related information, do you find though that there are false tweets sometimes, or people doing, I guess, prank tweets, and how do you handle that?
Well, there was one during Sandy. He actually ended up getting in trouble because he was the same guy who was talking about the stock exchange flooding. I think it's like Comfortably Smug might be the handle. He ended up getting in trouble, and now people, I think, are talking about whether you can prosecute someone for what they tweet, because he created panic essentially during a crisis, and he did something about Con Ed saying that all the power's out, and we kind of just, you know, put it out there. No, the power's not out. We're not shutting down these networks, because you don't want crisis like that sort of situation to turn into something bad. So that is also part of why we're there. Is you don't want someone spreading terrible rumors that aren't true and scaring a lot of people. So it's kind of there to know this is what's happening. This is really, we are the official handle, and this is actually what's happening. So, I mean, for the stock exchange, they definitely got upset about that tweet. Mm-hmm. And for ours, we just easily said, no, the power's not getting put out. We're not shutting down that network. Power's still on. You're fine. So
it was shut down.
Yes.
Did a lot of people respond to this saying?
Well, right. He had, I think, a pretty decent following, and it started to spread pretty quickly, which is, I think, why he ended up getting in trouble, because he did the stock exchange, he talked about power going out, and it started to spread very fast. And during something like Sandy, or even, I guess Nemo isn't too big of a storm, but during storms like that, people are kind of looking for any type of information, and the scary information is the stuff that's going to fly the fastest on a handle like Twitter or something like that.
Did you have that experience prior with even the smaller handles during Irene?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was also, you just...
It's a great place for rumor control, and to sort of get the story straight and tell your side of what's actually happening. During Irene, there was some talk about shutting down Lower Manhattan, and that spread very quickly on Twitter. And we were able to go out and say that Con Edison is not shutting down Lower Manhattan, and that was retweeted many times. And that's what you want. You know, you want to be able to get your message out to as many people as possible, and retweeting is the best way to do that.
There was another rumor during Sandy, the arc that happened at our East 13th Street station. There was a YouTube video that went out of this flash. So they were saying that our employees were stuck there, which then ended up turning into like all people getting very scared that our employees were injured, or so we kind of had to shut that one down very quickly to say like, no, really, our employees are fine, we promise. Like, we would know, because that's the stuff that does end up spreading really quickly, and we don't want people worrying that we have 20 employees that are injured because of something that happened.
Absolutely. So when you do tweet that, do you tweet it repeatedly, because every 30 minutes or so, because as things start building
we'll
up?
respond to people and then also send it out on our own, and kind of like if the message hasn't really gotten through, you just kind of keep sending it out.
And you mentioned this briefly about video crews, just trying to appease people. So can you talk a little bit about that and how video really worked during the storm?
Sure. For a lot of the hard-hit areas that were out the longest, people didn't see crews in their area, and they didn't think that Con Edison was doing anything to help them. So if we saw a lot of tweets from the same area, because a lot of people would hashtag like their neighborhood Red Hook or something like that, we would send crews out to the area to kind of get footage of what our guys were doing in the area. It was huge for Westchester, because Westchester is a very densely kind of tree populated area. So you don't see the crews necessarily on your street, but they might be fixing something, 2 blocks down that is actually going to fix your house. So people were like, I don't see Con Ed trucks. Why don't I see Con Ed trucks? So we kind of sent out the video crews to show what the Con Ed trucks were doing, what the tree clearing crews were doing, so that they know that, no, really, they're in your neighborhood. And then we'd hashtag like Yorktown or whatever neighborhood they happen to be in, so that they would know that they might not be literally in front of your house, but they're in front of one of your neighbor's houses, and what they're doing might actually fix your house.
Exactly. I guess also just lastly, how do you see social media really, looking ahead, looking to the future? Do you see any changes you think you can make going forward, or is it good as it is?
I think one of the greatest things with communication is it's ever evolving, and we will always be looking at ways to improve and enhance communication with our customers. I think that we've seen a great success on Twitter, especially with Sandy. I know that, Amber did an incredible job during that storm, and I think that we'll just sort of keep going on, seeing how we can communicate with our customers best, and stick with Twitter and, respond to customers as best we can, and also, get our information out, because I think that that's why people follow us, is they want to get information, and we're there to give it.
Great. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me today. It's Liz Matthews and Amber Sisson from Con Edison, Public Relations Managers. And thank you for joining us today and watching Media Reporter. I'm Nicole Israel. Have a good night. Thank you guys for coming. It's really nice. A lot of good information, so I really appreciate it.